Okay, so first of all, I suppose the question is really, what is a personal statement or a supporting statement? Sometimes we get questions asking, what's the difference between a personal statement, a supporting statement, or a covering letter? The answer is they're all basically the same. So whether it's additional information, covering letter, supporting statement, personal statement, they're asking you for the same kind of information. So for postgrad, it really is an important part of your postgrad application because the course director will be reading this. So it really is an opportunity to expand upon your CV or to add to your CV or your application form. It's a chance for a course director to find out more about you. So it's a very personal document. So as an application form or a CV, it's quite clinical, it's black and white, it's a list of your previous study, your subjects, maybe relevant work experience, any research that you've completed. This is your opportunity to kind of speak person to person, but in a written format. The whole idea of a personal statement is it's quite easy to understand, but it's not as simple to write one. It is a skill like anything else to be able to kind of communicate effectively to a specific audience. So you may need to do several drafts before you're happy, and that's really normal. Okay, so you might want to do a first draft, come back again a couple of hours later or a couple of days later and just do a few drafts before you're really happy to send it in. So what should you include in your personal statement? Again, some universities will be very, very clear about what they want. They'll give you detailed instructions about what they want you to include in your personal statement. In that case, really, all you have to do is follow the instructions carefully. So write down the instructions. Also write down the word count. Sometimes you may have 200 words, you may have 500 words. There may be no limit to the word count. So you just want to make sure you adhere to the word count, or if there is no word count, that you don't make it too long, that you keep it short, concise and succinct. In most cases, they'll tell you what to do. If they don't, what you could do is structure your personal statement around the following 5 areas. Why you want to study this particular course, this particular institution, why they should select you, specific skills that you have that relate to the course, and explain how the course relates to your future career plans. So I'm going to go through each section briefly. Okay, why this particular course? So again, if you've been to any of our workshops recently on CVs, interviews, LinkedIn, before you ever start writing your personal statement, you need to do your research. Okay? So you need to maybe add, why you became interested in this area. Was it at school? Was it during your degree? How you learned about this course? Was it through lectures, through tutorials? What you enjoy about the subject area? And do you have any relevant work experience, or has co-op inspired you to learn more about the particular subject? So why this particular course? If you're in UL already and you're thinking about, applying for a postgrad in UL, you don't necessarily need to give a huge amount of detail about the university because you're already here. If you're applying to another university, another course in another university, you might want to add a little bit about why this university and why this particular course. So it's really about studying what's involved in the course, what modules will you be studying, are there any specific projects? So it just shows that you've done your research. And why this particular university? Okay, so are there any academics teaching on this course that you'd be interested in working with? Have they got any particular research interests in an area that you're interested in? You don't have to kind of know every single thing about the university, but again, it's just about showing that you've done your research and you've thought about, why do I want to study with this particular department, possibly with this particular lecturer or academic? What's involved in the course? Is there a work placement? So when it comes to the institution and the course, you're really just doing your research on why this course, why this institution, and you're showing that you've done your research. Next part really is why you. So the first part is really why them, why the course, why the college. Next part is why you. So you want, again, I think some courses, they're open to kind of, lots of different applicants. Other courses are very, very competitive. So again, you have to really kind of push your case on why you. So you really need to think about how your skills, interests, academic achievements relate to the course. But this section is about you. So your academic strengths and your interests, any high grades you've received or that you're expecting to receive if you're in your final year, specific work experience that you've done that could be relevant to this particular area, especially in areas possibly like psychology, social care, anything like that where relevant experience is expected. Make sure you kind of go into detail about that. You may not have to include relevant experience for some postgrads. It may be, if it's a research postgrad, it may be more your research interests, your FYP, research methods, things like that as well. But this section is all about you. Why me? Again, your FYP could be important, the research skills that you have, quantitative research, qualitative research. For most postgraduate programs, especially at master's level, you will be doing kind of a major research project as well. Not necessarily, but the likelihood is that you could be doing some research. So you need to show that you're comfortable with research, that you're familiar with different research methods as well. So don't forget about any research that you've done. Also, I suppose any extracurricular activities which demonstrate an interest in the area. If you've got some really kind of, or if you've got lots of kind of extracurricular activities, but they aren't related to this specific program, you don't need to include them, okay? So remember, it has to be targeted, it has to be relevant, and it has to be concise. So make sure that everything you're writing in your personal statement is relevant to the postgrad that you're applying for. Suppose you also need to include specific skills that relate to the course you're applying for. So again, depending on what it is, I know we've got somebody here from environmental science, from business. You need to include maybe laboratory skills, research methods, scientific skills, any specific skills or knowledge that you have. Make sure you include that in your application as well. Okay, so that's really important. So again, maybe it's an opportunity to think about, okay, what skills do I have? So you might need to go back over last year, the last couple of years, this year as well. What skills do I have? What am I bringing to this program? So again, make sure that they're relevant. So then you're kind of thinking about, you know, the bigger picture. How does this postgraduate course relate to my career plans? So even if they haven't asked you about this, it just shows that you've really thought about how, you know, where it fits into your life. So you might just want to mention how it will give you the necessary skills to prepare you for a career in a certain area. Okay, deadlines. We're always getting asked questions about deadlines. When are the deadlines for postgrad programs? The answer to that is they all differ, they all vary. Some will have early deadlines, some will have late deadlines. Some of them will have rolling deadlines, which means you can just keep applying throughout the year and they take applications as they come. But some will have very, very strict deadlines. If you're applying for a postgrad in UL, if you have a look at kind of the graduate studies page, you'll have a list of all the programs there and you'll see a button under each program where it says apply now. So again, every one of the programs in UL will have different application deadlines as well. So the earlier you do your research, the more time you'll give yourself to prepare. Some of them, a lot of them I imagine, will be quite strict. Some of them will be more flexible. But again, the more competitive the program, the stricter they will be about deadlines. So know when the closing dates are and know what the application process is. And remember that some will not take late applications. Okay, so I suppose that's the background really. You've done your research on yourself, you've done your research on the course, on the institution, you've thought about the skills that you have, you've looked at how it fits in with your career plans, and you've looked at the application deadlines. So the next part, this should be the easiest part really, because if you've done all your research beforehand, it should be a little bit easier to write your personal statement. So this should be kind of the last thing that you do. So how are you going to write your personal statement? So again, you need to adhere to the word count, so make sure you do that. You could write it in essay format, but again, make sure you've got spaces between paragraphs. You might want to use bullet points. So don't put it into one massive piece of text or one massive block of text where it makes it really difficult to read. You need to make it as easy as possible for the person that's reading it, okay? So just a sample outline. Section 1, you could just introduce yourself, why you've chosen this course, this profession, this industry, this university. Section 2, your relevant qualifications, subjects, modules, or relevant projects. Also the grades, I think. If they're looking for people with high grades and you're in your final year and you're not quite sure what you're going to get yet, obviously you don't know, but you're hoping to achieve a 2-1 degree, an honours degree, make sure you state that in section 2 as well. Section 3, I suppose this is kind of a more personal section where you're describing, you know, what makes you suitable. So you're really describing yourself here, and it is quite difficult for us in Ireland anyway when somebody says, what are your skills, what are you good at? So you need to take a bit of time to think, why me, and what personal qualities and achievements do I have that will make me a suitable candidate for this course? Again, if you have any relevant work experience, just give an outline of what that was and include that in your supporting statement as well, or your personal statement. You may not need to give a huge amount of detail, okay, but what you're doing is you're trying to get the person who's reading this, you know, to be interested in you, and you want them to kind of contact you either to offer you a place on the programme or to invite you to an interview. So it really is, when you've got the word personal or supporting statement, this is your voice speaking in the written format. So you just want the person reading it to know that you've done your research and you're actually speaking to them. Section 5 then is the summary. So just sum up your overall suitability, show clearly that you know what you want to get out of it, and you might want to include in this section any career plans that you have. Okay, so they're different sections. So I think this bit here is quite important because I suppose, you know, you think about first impressions. So we're looking at vision here. How does something look? Does it look like it's going to be easy to read? Does it flow well? Is it well spaced out? And then you're looking at the sound. So when you're reading a personal statement from somebody else, or you're reading a book, anything that you read, you know you can actually hear that person's voice in your head. So what do you sound like when you have, you know, when you have a personal statement written down? That's your voice that's speaking to somebody. So you need to be aware of how it looks and how it sounds. Okay, so again, when you're looking at it, or when somebody's going to be looking at your statement, you won't be able to include everything, okay? So you just need to include the relevant information. And again, remember, your writing is a reflection of your work and it's a reflection of you. So that's why it's important to spend quite a bit of time when you're writing your personal statement. And this could be the thing that separates you from other people as well. So it's well worth spending time, maybe redrafting, getting somebody else to have a look at it and being really 100% happy with it before you send it in. Because it's a personal statement, you are, you know, it is you speaking. So you're talking about I or me or my, okay? Again, just grammar, you know, words, however, additionally, furthermore, you can use that to link sentences with each other. Read it out loud to yourself at the end, or read it to somebody else. How does it sound? What does your voice sound like when somebody else is listening to it? So it's always a good idea just to read it out afterwards, just to see how does it flow, how does it sound, and how do you come across. You'd probably be asked for 1 or 2 referees at least as well. And I think if you're applying for a postgrad, it has to be, you know, one of them anyway, if not both. It'll tell you in the application an academic referee. So that needs to be somebody, you know, from a relevant subject area. So it could be an FYP supervisor, it could be a tutor, it could be a course director. I know, for example, people who are studying in the Chemie Business School in very big classes, it can be very difficult sometimes to, you know, for somebody to know you, or for you to know a lecturer, or for them to know you. But I suppose at the moment with online learning, there may be an opportunity because classes, you know, you may have more contact with them, or you may have tutorials where you get to ask questions. If you don't know your tutors very well or your lecturers very well, maybe this year is an opportunity to get to know them a bit more. it's important to ask their permission beforehand, not just to put the names down and then, send off, their details to somebody without their permission. So you need to get their permission. It might be a good idea to tell them what you're applying for. Maybe send them a copy of a CV, or tell them what it is you'd like them to say about you. That's fine if you know them really well. If you don't know them that well, that's going to be more difficult. And you might also want to give them a copy of your supporting statement, because remember, I suppose, they're dealing with a lot of students. They might not know you as well as you think they do, so it might be no harm just to give them a copy of your personal statement. Okay, so you've got an idea now of what to include, what to write, how it should look, how it should sound. So what are the kind of things that you should avoid? These things are so common in personal statements, and a lot of them, we see them all the time. So from a young age, since I was a child, I've always loved. They are a bit cliched, and I know they're very popular. And if you're really interested in a subject, you might want to use this, but if you can, I would try to avoid these, because they're just used so much. Again, if you're thinking about an area like teaching, for example, and you're in your final year, or you're already doing a postgrad, writing things like "I learned to communicate effectively," we would assume at this stage, or a course director would assume, that you already know how to communicate effectively. Your whole personal statement is an example of your communication skills, and you just didn't learn to communicate effectively when you were doing your co-op. So again, just don't state the obvious too much. Try not to flatter them too much either. And sweeping statements or unproven claims. So my achievements are vast. We've seen that before. They may be, but you wouldn't be putting that into a personal statement. Another thing that comes up an awful lot is stilted vocabulary. Phrases like "fueled my desire," "I was enthralled by." If you wouldn't use language like this in everyday life, I wouldn't be writing it in my personal statement as well. So try and keep it simple, keep it concise, but keep it professional. It's not as formal as you might expect, but it still needs to be written extremely well. If something's happened, that needs to be addressed, or you haven't, you missed something or didn't do particularly well, try not to dwell on the negative. I suppose the personal statement is for, it's for you to promote yourself, and it's for you to kind of try and convince the course director to accept you on the course. Now, again, if you came up against some obstacles and you've shown how you got over them, that's absolutely fine. But, try not to be too negative about yourself. And again, I suppose it needs to be short, it needs to be concise. Remember, the person reading it, they could be reading an awful lot of personal statements. And to be honest, most of them will be pretty standard, filled with lots of cliches, lots of irrelevant information. So just make sure that yours is personalised, it's written well, it sounds well, and it excludes irrelevant information. Okay, so if it's not relevant, keep it out. Okay, check your spelling and grammar. At this stage, you're either in your final year of university or beyond, and it's still very, very easy when you're writing, even using spell check, that it won't pick up on things. So again, just make sure to check your spelling and your grammar. Okay, to summarise, make sure it's tailored towards the subject, showing your understanding. Research what skills and qualities are needed for the course that you're applying to. Don't mention any irrelevant information. Make sure to include any career paths that you're considering. Don't leave it until the last minute, because again, it might take a bit of time and several drafts. So make sure you give yourself plenty of time before you send it in. I would absolutely get some feedback from others, so you can get it from ourselves in the career service, or from family or friends. Again, it's always good to have somebody else kind of mirror back to you what they're hearing or what they're reading. Absolutely, then keep a copy of what you have written, because if you're invited to an interview, it probably will be referred to as well.